He thought the janitor was just a quiet guy with a mop and a bucket. But when he challenged him to a friendly spar, what unfolded left the entire dojo stunned into silence. Never judge the quiet ones. Subscribe to Simply Stories for more true shockers like this. The dojo was polished, pristine, and filled with ambition. Every corner echoed with the sound of padded strikes, sharp yells, and the thuds of bodies hitting mats. Students trained intensely, their GIs snapping with each movement, each strike sharper than the last. Pride hung in the air like incense, especially when it came to the latest dojo favorite, a young black belt who had just returned from winning gold at a regional martial arts competition. He walked like a lion among cubs, cocky and confident, throwing glances in the mirror after every sparring match. Everyone admired him. Everyone but one man, the janitor. He came in late in the evening, just as the last class wrapped up. A black man, somewhere in his mid to late 40s, with steady hands and quiet footsteps. His work uniform was faded, and the boots scuffed. His expression rarely changed. Silent, focused, always respectful. He carried a mop, a keyring, and a silence that made most people uncomfortable. He didn't speak unless spoken to, and even then, only nodded or gave a short response. Most of the students treated him like furniture there, but unnoticed. They'd throw towels on the floor, spill water from their bottles, leave sweat-stained pads in messy piles. He always cleaned it up without complaint. Some of the younger students joked around him. One pretended to throw a kick while walking past. Another asked mockingly if he wanted to learn some moves. The janitor just kept working. He never flinched, never scowled, never rolled his eyes. He wiped the mats with precision, fixed crooked lockers without being asked, and restocked the soap in the bathroom as if it mattered to the world. If anyone ever paid attention, they might have noticed how deliberate every move he made was. But no one paid attention until that night. It was a Thursday. The instructor had just announced an open sparring evening for the following week. Anyone could participate, regardless of belt rank. A sign-up board was placed near the entrance, and names quickly began appearing. The black belt, fresh off his tournament high, was the first to write his name big, bold letters. His group of followers chuckled as they joked about who he'd schooled this time. Then, just as the janitor rolled out the mat cleaning bucket, the black belt turned and smirked. "Hey," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Maybe. The janitor wants to go around?" Laughter rippled through the room. The janitor didn't look up immediately. He wrung out the mop slowly, finished a full swipe across the mat, and then turned. His face held no expression. Not anger, not amusement, just calm. "I'm in," he said plainly. The laughter died instantly. A few heads turned sharply. Some blinked, waiting for the punchline. But the janitor had already set the mop aside and walked over to the board. He picked up the marker, wrote down his name, not big, it's not dramatic, then set the pen down neatly and walked back to his bucket. The room stood in a stunned hush. Even the black belt's smirk faltered for a second. "He's serious," one of the students whispered. No one responded. The instructor, who had been standing a few feet away, looked at the board, then at the janitor, then back at the board again. It said nothing. Practice resumed, but the mood had changed. The air wasn't light anymore. Eyes kept drifting to the janitor as he continued cleaning, completely unaffected by the shift in energy. No grin, no gloat. He moved as if he'd never spoken. Later that night, as the last student left and the lights dimmed in the dojo, the janitor remained behind, quietly polishing the mirrors with slow, steady strokes. His reflection moved with him, almost ghost-like. And if anyone had bothered to look closely, they might have noticed something strange in that reflection. Not fatigue, not weariness, but a sharp stillness, a presence. He finished his shift like he always did. Lights off, door locked, no words spoken. But outside in the parking lot, the black belt was still talking, loudly retelling stories of his championship match. His friends laughed and patted him on the back. But somewhere in the midst of it all, his eyes flicked back toward the dojo entrance, where the janitor had just stepped out. The two men locked eyes briefly. The janitor gave a single nod. No fear, no grin, just acknowledgement. Then he walked past. The group without a sound, fading into the night like a shadow with a purpose. From that moment on, the dojo wasn't just waiting for a sparring night, it was waiting for a reckoning. And no one, not even the black belt, could shake the chill that came with the janitor's calm reply, "I'm in." The gym was packed tighter than usual. Word had spread fast. Everyone wanted to see it, the final bout of the night, what many assumed would be a light-hearted mismatch. Maybe even a joke had become the most anticipated event in weeks. People brought their friends. Students who hadn't trained in months returned just to watch. Even a few parents lingered in the back, pretending to be there for their kids. The idea of the janitor stepping onto the mat with a regional champion didn't make sense to most, but the silence he'd left behind after signing up had planted something deeper than curiosity. It had planted doubt. The janitor arrived 30 minutes early. He wore no uniform, no belt, just a plain, dark athletic shirt, soft-soled shoes, and loose pants. No logos, no flash. He stretched in the corner by himself, silent as always, occasionally glancing at the mat. No earbuds. No chatter, just focus. The black belt arrived next, laughing with his usual crew. Dressed in his competition GI, the gold-stitched belt tight around his waist. He greeted the room with loud energy, tapping hands, doing warm-ups and exaggerated moves, spinning kicks, high knees, playful air punches. His fans were ready. Phones were out. A whistle sounded. The instructor stepped forward to explain the rules friendly. Sparring, clean contact, no striking to the head, submissions allowed, but no cranks. Both fighters nodded. The instructor paused longer than usual after that, eyes lingering on the janitor. Then slowly stepped back. They moved to the center. Contrast was striking. One man gleamed with confidence, grinning, loose-limbed, bouncing slightly. The other stood still, arms relaxed, feet planted, eyes watching every breath the black belt took. They bowed. The match began. The black belt wasted no time. He darted forward, launching a flurry of feints and a quick inside leg kick meant to test distance. The janitor didn't react, simply pivoted, barely just enough for the kick to graze air. Then he stepped in, almost lazily, and caught the champion's arm mid-motion. One twist, one pivot, and the black belt was airborne shoulder rolled. Back slammed onto the mat. The crowd gasped. The janitor released immediately and stepped back, giving him room. The black belt popped up, red-faced but smiling like it didn't bother him. He nodded, slapped his own chest, and tried again, this time quicker, angling with more aggression. He reached in for a collar grip, only for his wrist to be snapped aside. In a blink, the janitor slipped behind him, locked in a waist control, and swept his leg again. Another takedown. Cleaner. He didn't slam, didn't hurt him, just executed with sharp, undeniable precision. This time, the black belt rose slower. His grin faded. The room was silent now. No one laughed. Phones were still filming, but hands trembled slightly. The janitor waited, relaxed. His breathing hadn't changed. No signs of effort, just watching. The black belt changed tactics. He faked high, ducked low, grabbed a leg for a takedown. The janitor sprawled perfectly, reversed into a mount, and transitioned into an armbar so smooth it looked choreographed. The black belt thrashed for a second, then tapped twice. The room erupted not in cheers, but in stunned silence. No clapping, just phones clicking, heads whipping around, whispers flying. A few jaws visibly dropped. Someone in the back muttered, "What the hell was that?" The janitor released the hold instantly and stood. He offered a hand to help his opponent up. The black belt hesitated for a split second before taking it. They stood together in the middle of the mat. The black belt's chest rose and fell fast. The janitor barely looked like he'd broken a sweat. There was no celebration, no hand raised, just a bow. The janitor stepped back, nodded once, and walked toward the edge of the mat. He didn't look at the crowd, didn't smirk. He didn't even take a drink of water. He gathered his gym bag simple. Frayed at the Edgeson walked out through the side door as the instructor called the next pair to the mat. No one moved. The match was technically over, but the room felt frozen in time. It wasn't just that the janitor had won. It was how easily he had done it, how calm he had been. No tension in his shoulders, no wasted movement. Everything he did was tight, practiced, refined. People looked at the black belt like they didn't recognize him anymore. Some were still trying to make sense of it. Others were replaying the moment he first asked, jokingly, if the janitor wanted to spar. That laughter didn't age well. Now, all anyone could talk about was how he moved, what style that was, where he learned that grip reversal. The black belt sat down on the edge of the mat, breathing hard, head low, no friends around. Him now, no jokes. Oh. Just silence. One of the senior instructors quietly stood, walked toward the back, and picked up a clipboard from the wall. His eyes scanned the sign-up sheet from the week before. The janitor's handwriting was small, neat, almost too humble.
Ow.
There was no belt rank listed, no affiliation. It's just a name no one had bothered to learn until now. He set the clipboard down. Something had changed in the dojo. Something small, but deep. That night, the mop stayed in the closet. The mirrors weren't wiped, the towels weren't picked up, but no one complained. They were still standing in the aftershock of a quiet storm. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the dojo's quiet little sparring match had become something else entirely. Clips of the bout had exploded across local gym groups, martial arts subreddits, and niche fighting forums. The video wasn't even professionally shot, just shaky phone footage, but the way the janitor moved didn't need fancy angles. Every transition, every reversal, every clean takedown was watched and rewatched, slowed down, analyzed. People paused the footage to study his footwork, his posture, his calmness under pressure. Questions filled the comments. Asterisk, who is this guy? Style is that? Why haven't we seen him before? And the most common one, asterisk, why is he working as a janitor? Asterisk, it didn't take long before one of the veteran instructors from another city caught wind of the clip. He watched it on loop, eyes narrowing, leaning in closer with every frame. About the way the janitor moved, it wasn't just skilled, it was familiar. His posture, his counters, the precise weight shifts, there was no mistaking it. The old instructor dug into his personal archive, pulling up dusty footage from underground tournaments nearly 2 decades ago. Grainy VHS rips, forgotten names, silent crowds. And there he was. A younger version of the same man, moving with the same eerie composure. No drama, no showmanship, just destruction delivered with grace. Back then, he'd gone by a different name. He wasn't famous in the mainstream world, but in the right circles, he was feared. He didn't chase medals or endorsement deals. He fought in invitation-only events, bare-knuckle bouts. International no-GI challenges where the rules were fluid and the risks were real. He made it through undefeated until one day he just vanished. No press release, no farewell post. Gone, digging. Deeper revealed a single tragic note in an old forum thread. His younger brother had been killed in a car crash.
Oh, one he blamed himself for?
Word was, he stopped fighting after that. Gave everything up. Changed his name. Some said he traveled. Others believed he went into hiding. But no one guessed he ended up here mopping floors, fixing lockers, cleaning the mats that others bruised. Their egos on. At the dojo, the mood had shifted entirely. What was once routine became heavy with awareness. Students walked a little slower, spoke a little softer. And when the janitor entered that evening, same uniform, same quiet steps, the room fell into a hush. No one told them to. It just happened. He didn't acknowledge the attention. He simply went about his work, just as he always had. He wiped the windows. He replaced a broken soap dispenser. He realigned the stacked pads. But now, every move was watched with different eyes. Students, who used to ignore him now, greeted him with hesitant respect. A few offered help picking up towels, holding the door, even handing him a fresh water bottle without a word. One tried to thank him for the sparring lesson, just gave a faint nod and moved on. Another asked if he could show him that sweep. The janitor stared at him for a moment, then gently said, "Train what they already gave you. Master that first." His voice was low, even without judgment. The student nodded like he'd been handed a secret scroll. The dojo staff met privately that night. They felt something deeper than embarrassment. It wasn't just that they hadn't known who he was that they'd never thought to ask. He had been right in front of them every day, showing up on time, doing the work, listening to their shallow conversations, enduring their casual dismissal, and not once had he interrupted. Not once had he demanded recognition. They considered offering him an honorary black belt. They discussed elevating him to some kind of teaching position. But every idea felt hollow cheap in the face of the discipline he had shown. One of the senior instructors said, "He doesn't need our belts. He already carries something heavier." The black belt didn't return that week. His absence was louder than his presence had ever been. When he finally did come back, he walked. In alone, no entourage, no swagger. He wore the same GI, but without the same pride. His belt looked tighter now, like he wasn't sure if he deserved to wear it. He kept his head down during warm-ups. He trained with discipline, but spoke to no one. And when the janitor entered, he stood still for a moment, watching him sweep a corner of the mat. He didn't approach. Not yet. In that dojo, a new kind of silence had taken root. Not out of fear or guilt, but respect. The janitor had never asked for anything. No explanation, no apology, no platform. And somehow, that made his presence louder than anyone else's. That night, as the last lights dimmed and the final shoes exited the mat, the janitor remained. Alone again, just him. In the familiar rhythm of cleaning, he moved like always. Measured, focused, peaceful. The same man, but seen for the first time. The dojo felt different now. It's not in an obvious way, no grand banners, no dramatic ceremonies, but in something deeper, more atmospheric. It was in the way people walked in the door, and the way voices dropped slightly when the janitor passed. In the way the students stood, a little straighter, spoke a little softer, looked a little closer at the people they'd once overlooked. What had once been a place of routine training and layered hierarchies was now humming with quiet reflection. And it all started with a man who never raised his voice, never asked for attention, and never told anyone who he was. One Monday morning, before class began, the head instructor gathered everyone in the main hall. It wasn't unusual for him to give short motivational speeches, but this time, his tone was different. He looked at each person, white belts, black belts, parents, and even part-time staff before speaking. From today forward, he said, this dojo will hold a new standard. Respect is not given for your rank, your title, or your spotlight. It's given to everyone. Because discipline doesn't depend on position. True strength doesn't need a stage. Then he pointed at the newly printed poster on the wall, where a simple quote now stood beneath the gym's logo. Power needs no spotlight. No name was printed beneath it. But everyone knew from that day, things changed not drastically, but meaningfully. Students began greeting everyone with bows, not just their instructors. When the janitor walked in, heads turned with genuine acknowledgement. People helped hold doors open, carried heavy buckets without being asked, and started treating the space with more care, not because someone enforced it, but because the energy had shifted. Even small things mattered now. Towels were folded instead of tossed. Water bottles were picked up instead of kicked aside. The janitor didn't react much. He still came in at the same time, still wore the same quiet expression, still cleaned with the same precision. If the bows or smiles moved, he didn't show it. But he accepted them with a nod, and, on occasion, allowed a student to walk alongside him as he swept the hallway or adjusted mats. He never spoke more than necessary. A few students tried to start conversations, hoping he'd reveal more about his past, but he gently steered them back to the present. Focus on your footwork, he'd say. That tells me more about you than your story does. The black belt returned more regularly now, but he was different. His bravado had been replaced with humility. He trained harder than before, not to dominate, but to understand. He started volunteering to help beginners, even taking correction from lower belts without resistance. One afternoon, after class had ended, and the mats were nearly empty, he approached the janitor as he gathered supplies near the edge of the room. He paused. Hesitant at first, then finally spoke, "Thank you for the lesson." The janitor didn't look up right away. He finished what he was doing, then turned and met his eyes. "The mat doesn't lie," he said softly. "Only ego does." The black belt nodded, letting those words sit in the space between them. Didn't ask for more. He simply bowed and walked away. Word of the janitor's history continued to ripple through the martial arts community. More and more people came to the dojo asking about the mysterious man in the cleaning uniform who moved like water and struck like stone. Some came expecting a spectacle, hoping he'd teach, or spar, or at least share his past. But he never did. He stayed in the background, where he seemed most at home. One evening, the dojo's board extended an official offer, an honorary black belt, along with lifetime membership and full access to the facility as a respected peer. It was presented formally, with quiet reverence. The janitor stood as they spoke, his hands behind his back, eyes steady. When they finished, he thanked them sincerely, but declined the belt. "Belts measure memory," he said, "not presence." Then, after a moment, he added, "But I'll accept the right to train again." From then on, he could occasionally be seen in a far corner of the mat during open sparring hours, never instructing, never showing off. It's just flowing with quiet partners, white belts, brown belts, even instructors moving with such subtle precision that watching him felt more like listening to music than observing combat. No one shouted, no one filmed. It was understood somehow that this wasn't content for online feeds. This was something else. He didn't train every day. Sometimes he simply swept the mats, watched a few rounds, and disappeared before class even began. But his presence was now woven into the dojo's very structure. Parents mentioned him to their kids on the ride home. Students referred to things he said during random drills. Even visiting instructors noticed the shift in tone. One asked, "What happened here? It feels ... calmer." And the head instructor simply replied, "We started listening to someone who never spoke."
Oh.
The janitor never sat in the front during seminars. He never offered critiques or corrections. But when someone struggled, when a student fell out of rhythm or broke down in frustration, he'd sometimes appear beside them, offer a towel, a short observation, or a tip that cut right to the core. Not long-winded, just one sentence, maybe two. And then he'd vanish again. Late one night, long after the last class had ended, the janitor remained alone in the dojo. The overhead lights were dimmed, casting a soft glow across the smooth surface of the mat. He moved slowly with a wide push broom, his steps quiet, rhythmic, almost meditative. The broom glided along the edge of the room, his hands guiding it in a pattern only he seemed to understand. There were no spectators, no music, no chatter. Just the faint hum of the lights and the soft brush of bristles against the mat. Unseen to him, a few students had remained in the doorway. They didn't say anything. They didn't interrupt, just watched, still and silent. Something about the moment felt sacred, as if they were witnessing the final move of the most profound sparring session ever held. Not a match of strength or speed, but of presence, humility, and grace. He didn't notice them watching. Or maybe he did, and just chose not to acknowledge it. He finished his sweep, walked to the storage room, and put the broom away. Once more across the room, not with pride, not with sentimentality. Just with the peaceful gaze of someone who'd made peace with both what had been and what was now, he turned off the lights, and as the door clicked shut behind him, the dojo seemed to exhale. Not just a building anymore. A place transformed not by a title or a trophy, but by the quiet strength of a man who never needed to prove anything to anyone.